Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of He's Not Wrong, and I'm your host, Chad D. In the history of the United States, there has never been a moment quite like this. A newly elected member of Congress, chosen decisively by her community, certified by her state, and ready to serve, blocked from taking the oath of office by Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, breaking with protocol and precedent for newly elected representatives. Her name is Adelita Grijalva, a lifelong public servant from Tucson, Arizona, and the daughter of late Congressman Raul Grijalva, and the first Latina ever elected to represent her state of Arizona in the U.S. House of Representatives. She arrived in Washington, D.C. last week with her family by her side, suitcase in hand, fully paid for, out of her own pocket, prepared to get to work for the people of Southern Arizona that elected her. But instead of being sworn in, she stood in the halls of Congress as a guest, not as her rightfully earned spot as an elected representative. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, gavelled the session closed after 3 minutes, and he walked away. Her office door has her name on it, but since she wasn't sworn in, she wasn't given the keys. She has no staff. Her district of over 800,000 people, they have no representation in Congress, and yet they still have to pay their taxes. Behind that procedural delay, behind the excuses about scheduling and standard practice from the Speaker of the House, lies a very dark truth. Because Representative-elect Adelita is the 218th signature for a discharge petition that would force Congress to release the long-suppressed Department of Justice Epstein files, the very files that could expose a web of money, power, and abuse that stretches all the way from Wall Street down to Mar-a-Lago, with potential implications of a sitting U.S. president and other powerful world figures. But before she ever ran for higher office, Adelita spent more than 25 years working with at-risk youth at Pima County Teen Court, helping families find restoration instead of punishment. And she served for nearly 2 decades on the Tucson Unified School District Board, fighting for bilingual education, Mexican-American studies, and expanded preschool access when the state tried to erase those programs. She went on to become the first Latina chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors, where she launched the county's first free preschool program, secured historic investments in affordable housing, and championed environmental justice in one of the most climate vulnerable regions of the United States. So in other words, she has spent her entire life doing the work that keeps a community vibrant and safe and alive. But now she's being silenced because all the signs are pointing to the fact that the discharge petition to release those files currently sits at 217 signatures, and it only needs one more, and she would be the 218th signature. And so far, for the first time in modern history, the House of Representatives has effectively silenced an entire congressional district, leaving hundreds of thousands of Americans without representation in the middle of a government shutdown. Federal workers are missing paychecks. Families are losing vital constituent services. The country has quite literally grinded to a halt, and yet the House remains dark. This isn't just about one woman being denied her seat. It's about democracy being stretched to its limits, denying individuals their constitutional rights, denying accountability to those who have perpetrated crimes, and to the victims who deserve justice. So today on He's Not Wrong, we sit down with Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, the woman they're afraid to swear in. We'll talk about the fight to claim her seat, the people she represents, and the battle for transparency that may reshape American politics forever. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva. Welcome, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, to He's Not Wrong. Thank you so much for being with us today. I just want to go ahead and set the stage for the audience, because you were elected decisively, and yet despite precedent and protocol, Speaker Mike Johnson has refused to swear you in. So Representative-elect, I want to start with just the basics. You won by a landslide. You went to Washington ready to serve and represent the people of Arizona's 7th Congressional District. So I just want you to walk me through what the past few weeks have been like, and what it was like to arrive in D.C. as a member-elect and to not be sworn in, not able to access your office or represent those who sent you to D.C.
Yeah, so it's been a a whirlwind. You know, we won by almost 40 points. It's very appreciative of the voters who turned out just for our election. I mean, I was the only thing on the ballot, so people were making a conscious decision to like, let's go ahead and vote in this race. And we ran on a very progressive platform, very similar to the one that my dad always championed. The apple did not far fall from the tree on that one. So we pushed public education and protecting our environment, tribal sovereignty, and the economy, work for working people, immigration, and really at this point in our nation, protecting our democracy, like in general, our rights. That was what we talked about all the time. So I get to DC, and I don't know if people know this, but I think there is a reason why working people don't run for these offices all the time, because I don't have a budget. I don't have a staff. I don't have anything. So to get to DC, I paid for it. And just as a reminder, I have not been employed for 7 months and I have 3 kids. These things are not easy to sort of navigate. So I get to DC fully hoping that I was going to get sworn in. And we have a caucus, and every single Democrat is there, which was a little surreal for me because I'm a bit of a fangirl for a couple, right? So I walk in and everyone was very kind. Representative Greg Stanton introduced me to everybody. It was great. We talked about the issues and that we were going to have several press conferences. So one of them, you meet in the bottom of the Capitol and then walk out the Capitol steps. I had to be escorted by a staff member from Leader Jeffrey's staff because I don't have any clearance. My staff doesn't have any clearance. So just to sort of understand that everyone's like, you're a member of Congress, but at every turn, I'm reminded that I'm not, because I'm borrowing a conference room from, a Representative Morell, who was very gracious. I mean, everyone has been exceedingly kind to me and understanding how frustrating this situation is. But we had 3 other people sworn in a special. 2 Republicans on April 1st. They were sworn in April 2nd on a pro forma day. No official votes, but you can go out and you can read proclamations, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The next one, about 3 weeks ago, Representative Walkinshaw from Virginia, and he's a Democrat and was sworn in no less than 24 hours after he was elected. And here we are, and it is now day 11 since the election, and there is no end in sight. I thought for sure it would be the 7th. Now votes have been canceled, and then perhaps the 14th. But, Speaker Johnson just made a comment that until there is a budget passed by the Senate, the House isn't coming back. So they're on vacation. Democrats were there to get to work and try to negotiate so we can keep the government open. And now it seems like there's no rush to change, to open up the government again.
It's mind-boggling to me that the ball keeps being pushed down the line for your swearing in. Mike Johnson called it standard practice or standard protocol when, like you said, we've seen several members since the spring and special elections get sworn in, and it only makes you think that if it serves a Republican agenda, yes, you have a pass to enter into Congress, but then if you're a Democrat, this is what we get. What is your response to Mike Johnson saying that this is standard practice? I know you spoke a little bit to it, but speak a little bit more about this being standard protocol, because we clearly know it's not.
And I think the American people can see it. Here in Arizona, people are incredibly frustrated, regardless of whether you voted for me or not. I am the representative for Arizona, and I am not able to be at the table when decisions and discussions are happening, literally right now. And so this is not standard practice. It's not, because in this speaker's recent history, since April, he has sworn in 3 people in under 24 hours. And, at first, I heard a lot of conspiracy theories about why not, why am I getting pushed back? And I really am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't really believe that. But now, as the ball keeps getting punted down, the only difference between me and Representative Walkinshaw, we're both Democrats, is the fact that I'm the 218th signer for the discharge petition. That's the only thing I can think of. And I hate to put it that way, but there is no other reason that I wasn't sworn in on the pro forma day last Tuesday.
Yeah, we're going to get into that here in a few minutes. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into you being the 218th vote to release the Epstein files. But to keep it on you not being sworn in, I want to know what the people on the ground in your home district, Arizona 7th Congressional District, what your constituents are saying, because right now they don't have constituent services. They're in the middle of the government shutdown. So federal workers in your district, they don't have a representative to go to voice their concerns or to get resources and help. So what are you hearing on the ground in Arizona right now?
There is an incredible level of frustration because, one, I was overwhelmingly elected. There is no dispute. Official results are going to happen on October 14th. So what that means is that every county, this district covers 6 counties. Every county has to vote to approve the canvass, and then those official results go to the Secretary of State, signed by the governor, and we're all set. And so I need to understand if I have any legal recourse if this is going to continue over and over again. But I can't hire staff. I can't open an office. I don't have a budget. So I am, for all intents and purposes, elected. Thank you very much, but I have no way to help people. And that is, in my belief, the number one thing that we do in Congress is provide federal supports to people who need it. And in the middle of a shutdown, we're going to have so many people that are going to need assistance. And I am going to do what I can, work with my colleagues that are elected to try to support any efforts locally, but we can't do anything because we don't have an office. I don't have staff. It is very difficult to do.
Some Democrats have called this an act of voter disenfranchisement. And I personally, I might be a little too far left for this, but I think it's election interference in a way, evolving in front of our eyes, because it's the fact that people have elected someone and then you have someone in leadership who's outright refusing to swear them in. And so I feel like that is just a different form of election interference combined with voter disenfranchisement. But I was wondering if you agree with that characterization, or what this precedent sets for future elections where one party can just simply refuse to seat an opponent.
You know, I had an opportunity to talk with Speaker Emerita Pelosi. And she said it was her practice when she was the speaker that it didn't matter what party they're from. It's a really important moment for that individual, for their family, and it is a celebration for the community. And so every time this date has been changed or I've been denied being sworn in, it just takes a little bit of that joy away. Yeah. And it's frustrating because I have 3 children and a husband, and I made flight arrangements to get them there to DC next week, next Tuesday, because that was the date I was told. And now that's changed. And I do believe that it's really suppressing the voice of Southern Arizona because we're not there. And that is more frustrating than anything because people want me to fight for them. That's why I was sent to Congress, to do a job. And Speaker Johnson is denying me the opportunity to do my job.
Yeah, I've had guests come on here before, and more specifically, I worked on a congressional campaign years ago. My audience is probably tired of hearing me talking about this, but I worked on a former Miss America's congressional campaign, Democratic campaign here in Alabama. And she had to give up her job. She was a journalist to run for Congress. We just did a podcast episode a few weeks ago where we were talking about the barriers of entry, especially in super red states like Alabama, where there's not really a big Democratic infrastructure that can support candidates, just the cost and the sacrifice that it takes. And I'm so happy that you're speaking to this in somewhere that's not the South, that's deep red, but you're in Arizona. There's a strong Democratic Party there, and even it's a struggle for well-established and supported candidates like yourself. And it's something that everyone, I feel like, should be aware of, that it is difficult to run for office, and it comes out of price, and it comes out of sacrifice, not just for you, but for your family and for your constituents. So, thank you for talking about that.
We do have a good county party and we have a state party, but they were in the middle of a transition and they don't get involved in primary races. And so the race that was won here was won by the 1,400 volunteers that knocked on 51,000 doors and 405,000 phone calls. All of the organizations that supported our campaign, like the Working Families Party and Progressive Democrats of America, and individuals helped. But the system that is set up here was set up by my dad. And it was a big umbrella to help candidates. And so when you look at Tucson and Pima County and see how bright blue it is in the middle of this wave of like red and purple in Arizona, it's because he prioritized creating space for people of color, for women to be able to get support they needed. And that is the same thing that this campaign, once we're done here, we're going to continue that tradition, because I think it's really important for working families to know that this is something that you can do. You can do it, and you're going to get help to do it, because there is nobody else running to help candidates of color anywhere, but not even here in Tucson.
You're widely understood to be the deciding vote, the 218th signature on a bipartisan petition to release the Justice Department's Epstein files. And I want to talk about what's really at stake. You've been very public that one of the first acts in your office would be signing the discharge petition to release the Epstein files. So I'm curious why that transparency is so urgent right now.
Well, really, this was an issue that was brought up by the Republicans during Trump's election, that day one, those files were going to be released. And so there is an interest in them. And then we had a press conference with victims who feel like their voice has not been heard. They have not seen justice for the crimes that were committed against them. And so it really is about giving voice to those victims and consequences for anyone who perpetrated a crime. And so when we start to open these up, at first I didn't think that there was really anything there. Maybe there isn't going to be a lot of noise and nothing to see here. But the more often, like, Congress has literally been shut down to avoid this vote, like to have the conversation. So there has to be more to it. And I want to release those so the public, press, anyone that wants to see what's going on in those files has access to them.
You are going to be sworn in. Like that is inevitable. You are going to be sworn in, and you will be the 218th signature. So it's only a matter of time. The files are going to have to be released. And so from your perspective, and this might be too conspiracy theory, if you just want to move on to the next question, we can, but I'm curious what you think that them buying or using this time, what they're trying to buy time for, because it's going to be released. Like, what are they hiding?
Well, I do think that Speaker Johnson and Republican leadership are working on the 4 Republicans that have signed on to this petition to discourage them from staying on. What that looks like, I have no idea, but we have heard from at least 2 of the representatives that they have been approached to take their name off. And so maybe that's it. I don't know.
Republicans right now say that the Epstein issue is a Democratic hoax, but the petition itself is, as you just said, bipartisan, led by Reps Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna in California. And so I'm wondering, what does this say about how deep this issue cuts, knowing that the issue has bipartisan support, but they're trying to make it seem like it is a partisan issue, if that makes sense?
Every Democrat has signed on. And so early on, when this conversation started happening, there was reference to, well, what if this person is in there? Somebody that's, involved in the Democratic Party. And my response was, it doesn't matter who's in there. Yep. There should be legal consequences for whoever committed a crime, period. I don't care. For me, it is about the victims and bringing voice to them. And the consequences for whomever is implicated are their consequences to bear.
And so Senator Schumer said last week, or he said this week actually, that Republicans care more about protecting the Epstein files and protecting the American people. What message do you think that this delay in releasing the files is sending to the American people?
I think you need to look at who Republicans are fighting for right now. They were not at the table when Democrats were there, ready to work to avoid a government shutdown. The House is not coming back in any time in the near future, from what we can tell. Everyone is pointing fingers, but this is a Republican shutdown. Democrats are fighting for health care. We are fighting for ACA benefits, and so every individual doesn't have to pay an extra $700 to have health care. That is already crazy expensive. Here in Arizona, where children, 1 in 5 children are going to lose their health care. That's what we're fighting for. What are Republicans fighting for? Because they're not fighting for the American people.
And as this government shutdown stretches on, millions of Americans, and especially federal workers in Arizona, are suffering, and they will continue to suffer. And you call this shutdown a manufactured crisis, and you just spoke a little bit to it, but your district is largely a border district, and you have a lot of working families there in southern Arizona. So I'm wondering how this government shutdown is specifically affecting your constituents in the 7th Congressional District of Arizona.
I don't know anyone that can go without a check, that can just, has the savings. Yeah. This economy has been devastating to so many people. So many people have lost jobs. So there is nobody that I know that can continue to work and hope that they get back pay. But Trump's also threatened federal workers with just general firing. If we go into a furlough, he's just going to fire people. I have a friend who is a park ranger. I have a cousin who's a park ranger in another state. I have a brother-in-law who works at the Veterans Administration. None of them can afford to just forgo their pay, nor should they have to. This problem was created over months. The last time Schumer voted for an extension, this resolution, this is important for us. You use this time to work. And the problem is, if we don't codify it into law, these Republicans cannot be counted on to not change the rules, to not walk back any commitments they made. So you have to write it down. There is no handshake deal that's able to be made here, because there is no trust on either side. And so if we're going to do this, we have to put it into law.
And Speaker Johnson has said that he, as you have pointed to, he won't reconvene the House of Representatives until the Senate meets to pass their funding terms, which effectively is holding up your seat in your swearing in. It's holding the country hostage. And even though we talked a little bit about Arizona being a purple state, your district is largely Democratic, but you do represent Republicans who listen to and respect your viewpoints. And so I'm really curious about the message that Speaker Johnson is sending to a state that literally is very important to the Republican agenda. And with the midterms coming up, what impact do you see it having on their agenda? Do you think they're even thinking in those terms right now?
Oh, I know they're thinking in those terms, because they keep saying that this is the Democrats. This is our fault. They have the majority in the House, the Senate, and the White House. Where do you see that this is our fault? All we are saying, we're not trying to roll back every horrible thing in that bill. What we are saying is, let's work on health care. Let's work on access for people to be able to have health care. Republicans are spinning this as some sort of yarn about, this has to do with undocumented people getting benefits. Oh, stop. Nobody believes that. What we are fighting for is for the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
We're fighting to reduce the cost, or at least continue that subsidy, so people can actually have health insurance for their families, and really keep these rural community hospitals and programs open, so everyone in this community can access it. There are 4 hospitals in rural communities in or near CD7 is going to be greatly impacted if we don't correct some of these horrible mistakes in that bill. Yeah. And so I think Republicans are losing out. And when you ask anybody, they're losing out. And especially here in Arizona, whether you voted for me or not, the fact that I am not already sworn in is a big issue. I know that because I just was at the University of Arizona big football game. They introduced me and people were, cheering. And when I walked out, they said, so when are they finally going to swear you in? And I said, I will let everyone know as soon as I get a date.
So the economy is struggling right now, as we discussed. The job numbers are not looking good, and tariffs are driving up costs. And as you have said, Democrats are fighting to preserve the ACA tax credits to keep healthcare affordable. And if those expire, if they don't renew those tax credits, premiums are going to skyrocket, and it's going to make healthcare expensive for everyone. So I'm just wondering, how does this fight tie into the broader battle to protect working families in an economy that's already struggling at this stage?
What's happening is we have this administration creating a society of the have and the have-nots. 90+% of us are in the have-nots. We're not important. We're not a priority. There is no consideration to us. They're focused on a 1%, billionaires, people that have a lot of money, people that, Trump feels is valuable. Unfortunately, he's not looking at the job numbers because, the director had the nerve to tell the truth about where we are in our economy. We have our greatest allies, Mexico and Canada, working around the United States, not carrying our products. We're going to have huge deficits here. The blows to our economy are going to be significant. And unfortunately, the losers are working people. I mean, I have 3 kids. We're a family of 5. I used to be able to go to the grocery store with $100 and get enough food for the week. I can get enough food for a couple days. And God forbid it's the day that you have to buy, dish soap or laundry detergent, then that just wipes you out. And I am not alone in feeling like there is nobody coming to help us. We have more people utilizing food banks and food pantries at churches, going for free meals than we ever saw before. And there are more and more women and children that are facing being unhoused and struggling. So that is the backbone of our communities. And we have to fight for them.
It's interesting that you say that because, and I know we've talked a little bit in the past few minutes about how with you not being sworn in, you haven't had a paycheck, you've been campaigning, you're not sworn in, you can't have a staff. Alabama Senator Katie Britt, she did this whole performative thing where she and this was in the past few days, she instructed the Senate clerk to withhold her Senate pay. Previously, I used to think, sure, if the government isn't working for the people, then maybe the elected representative shouldn't be getting paid. But then I started thinking, I was like, what a privilege it is in a government shutdown for you to be able to say, I'm not going to take a paycheck because I'm going to be fine. I have savings. I have stock investments that are going to keep me going, something that everyday Americans cannot tap into. And so I made a TikTok yesterday that went Alabama viral, I'll say, that was calling on Katie Britt to accept the paycheck, but donate it to local nonprofits to help them fill the gaps, because there are so many people who are now having to rely on local services to meet their needs because they're not being met right now. And so it's just really refreshing to hear an elected representative speak to those needs and issues that people are facing. So thank you for that. And as we're working towards the last few questions of our conversation, I wanted to ask a few personal questions because you were the first Latina elected to represent Arizona in Congress. And so I'm curious what that milestone means for you, but also what message is your election sending to young women who are watching this play out in real time?
Yeah. Thank you for that. It's a lot of responsibility. I was the youngest woman elected to the school board. I was the first Latina to serve as chair on the Pima County Board of Supervisors. And so I think it's great, but it's kind of a sad statement that in 2025, I'm the first Latina Chicana from Arizona to go to Congress. And so I think that it definitely, we broke the glass ceiling, but more critically important is making sure that I might be the first, but I'm not going to be the last. Mm-hmm. And that when people get to these levels, you put your hand down and pull people up with you. And that's important as well. Because I want our office to be incredibly diverse and give opportunities to people that are from this district that might not have the opportunity, but definitely are capable and are smart and driven and can help represent this district, this beautifully diverse district. And so that's my goal. And for me, I went to all public schools. My parents are, public school advocates and attended public school. I went to the University of Arizona, and I want young people to see me in these spaces and say, well, if she can do it, I can do it. Because they can.
To the people who are watching this episode or listening to it, they might be feeling disillusioned. They might see this obstruction and think, what's the point? And it just makes them more apathetic to the government process and to their civic duty. What's your message to them right now, if that's what they're thinking?
Don't be discouraged. We have hope. We have to have hope. And I am going to get sworn in. These little games are annoying, and they are, I think, designed to sort of push people down. But yo no me voy a dejar. I'm not going to let myself. And I don't want you to either. This is an opportunity for us to fight back. And we're going to fight back together. Juntos lo podemos hacer. Together we can do it. And we are going to. And so that moment where I get to give my acceptance speech and say some words to my community is going to be a great feeling. And I think it is time that another Grijalva is in the house. So I'm excited to be there.
In the meantime, what can we do? What can my audience and the people listening, what can we do to help you and your community as it's lacking constituent services and representation? What can we do to help you?
Definitely reach out to Speaker Johnson. Blow up his phone. People have been doing it, and I very much appreciate it. You can send emails. You can do social media posts. I think it's important that people hear repeatedly, what are you trying to protect yourself or Trump or other Republican donors from? Why are you holding on to these files? And let's be very clear that this damage that is being done is devastating to our entire community. Like, we have, Davis Monthan Air Force Base. We have federal workers throughout our communities. There are people that are struggling and suffering right now. And you need to let Speaker Johnson know to stop playing games with people's lives and get back to work. End your vacation early and get back to work. And I'll be there.
My final question for you, Representative-elect, what are you not wrong about?
Okay. So I am not wrong that the people of Southern Arizona deserve our voice in Congress, and we right now. And the GOP is not only holding Arizona 7 hostage, but the nation. And so Democrats are ready to fight. We're ready to serve. We want to save lives, and we have your back. And Republicans are too concerned with playing politics, and they need to protect the people.
You are not wrong about that. And you know what? This isn't just about one district in Arizona. It's about whether voters still decide who represent them or whether what the powerful do in response. And we are so thankful that you are leading this fight and you are not staying silent and you are being present and showing up and speaking to these issues. So I just want to say, Representative-elect Adelita, thank you so much for your time and for doing what you are doing. Whatever we can do to help, please reach out. I'm going to let my audience know to support you and to reach out to their representatives. And I just want to thank you for your time this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
I just once again want to thank Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva for coming on to He's Not Wrong, talking about what's at stake with them denying her the ability to be sworn in and to represent Arizona's 7th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. There is so much on the line with her not being sworn in. By delaying her swearing in, they're delaying the release of the Epstein files. They are effectively silencing the victims who deserve justice, and they're protecting perpetrators of crimes. The people in her district, they don't have constituent services. Adelita's story right now is so important. More people need to be talking about it. I know a lot of news outlets and news organizations are talking about it, and they're giving regular updates as to how long it's been since she's been elected and how long the delay that Speaker Johnson has made, how long that's been. By all accounts, it seems like Speaker Johnson is just going to continue moving the ball down the line with the date. Originally, she was supposed to be sworn in a few days after, and then they moved it a few days later, and now it's moved to the middle of October, and now he's saying that she's not going to be sworn in until the Senate, does their thing with figuring out what the continuing resolution should be to reopen the government. So he's holding her district hostage, and for why. So that's what we try to get to in this episode, is the why. So again, I want to thank Adelita for coming on here and sharing her story and spending time with us to talk about what's at stake. What I need everyone to do, she talked a little bit about it towards the end of the episode, but we need to be emailing and calling Mike Johnson's office religiously, incessantly, making sure that he knows that people are angry that he's not swearing her in. I want to take it a step further. We also need to be letting our local, state, and federal representatives know that this is of utmost importance to us. I say local and state as well because they are in regular communication with our federal representatives. So the more we can put the pressure on these people to swear her in and to pressure Mike Johnson, the better. We don't need just a narrow approach at sticking up and supporting and fighting for Adelita, but we need to make sure it's a broad approach so the pressure can be felt from all angles across this country. So please, please, please reach out to all your elected representatives and let them know that you're not happy with what's happening. And hopefully we can get this message relayed on her behalf and get her sworn in and make sure that her 218th signature is recorded and force a vote on the House floor to release those Epstein files. So with that being said, thank you, Adelita, for coming on. We talked a little bit after we were done recording about what another episode would look like. So I look forward to, in the near future, having her come back on. If you have anything that you are not wrong about, please give me a call at 205-538-3202. That's 205-538-3202. And you can leave me a voicemail about whatever it is that you're not wrong about, and I will feature it on a future episode. I appreciate you for listening this far. If you've made it this far into the episode, be sure to share this with your family and your friends, not just because obviously it's good for ratings, but more people need to know what's at stake with the delaying of her swearing in, and we need everyone we can get a hold of to make sure that we're making some contact points with the Speaker's office and our elected representatives. So the more people that can hear this and take action, the better. So again, I appreciate you for listening, and I will see you next Sunday.